We think we know Angelina Jolie, the rebel in black leather, and the saint in a flowing gown, the wild child and the mother to nations. We watched her transform from Hollywood's darkest obsession into a global humanitarian icon. But what if this wasn't a reinvention, but a calculated, desperate escape? What if the perfect life she built for the world to see was actually its own kind of prison? The story of the two Angelina Jolies isn't about fame or fortune. It's about what she had to destroy, just to survive. Her story begins in a golden cage, haunted by the ghost of Hollywood royalty. Before she had a name of her own, she had his voight. Being the daughter of Oscar-winning actor Jon Voight wasn't a privilege. It was a crushing weight, a pre-written identity she never asked for. Their relationship, played out in public, was a roadmap of fractures and pain. He would often leave her and her mother for long periods, creating a void of instability at the very core of her childhood. In early interviews, you can see a profound discomfort in her own skin, a sense of alienation from the world that was supposed to be her birthright. This fractured family legacy became her first true antagonist. The pressure cooker of fame, combined with this deep-seated feeling of abandonment, forged her inciting incident. The desperate need to become someone, anyone, else. The shadow of her father was suffocating, and she wouldn't just run from it. She would incinerate it. To erase the name Voight, she had to create a persona so extreme, so shocking, it would become its own gravitational force. This was the birth of the wild child, but it was far from aimless. It was a deliberate act of creation. She immersed herself in roles that mirrored her own darkness, from the tragic supermodel in Gia, a role that left her feeling so broken she almost quit acting, to her early work in films like Hackers. Her art and life began to blur into one unsettling performance. The unsettling fascination with knives, the candid admissions of deep depression and self-inflicted pain, the tattoos that turned her body into a defiant canvas. It was all part of the blueprint. This era culminated in the tabloid firestorm of her relationship with Billy Bob Thornton. Their love wasn't whispered. It was screamed from the headlines. They were a performance art piece of raw, chaotic passion, sealed with vials of each other's blood worn around their necks. It was a direct, visceral rejection of Hollywood's clean-cut romance. But this was more than just edgy behavior. It was a calculated strategy. She was taking control of her own narrative by making it too bizarre for anyone else to define. The world was so busy talking about the spectacle that they stopped talking about her as Jon Voight's daughter. The strategy was working, but the cost was becoming terrifyingly clear. This persona, built on chaos and darkness, was about to collide with the ultimate symbol of Hollywood validation, forcing a crisis she never saw coming. In the year 2000, Angelina Jolie reached the industry's highest peak. She won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. And the role she won it for? A magnetic, sociopathic patient in a mental institution in Girl, Interrupted. The irony was staggering. She was being rewarded for portraying the very chaos she was living. This should have been her crowning moment, the ultimate triumph. Instead, it became a chilling portrait of her breaking point. Draped in gothic black, looking gaunt and haunted, her acceptance speech was strange and unsettling. The infamous kiss with her brother on the red carpet ignited a media frenzy that painted her as an outcast even at the very center of the universe. The media didn't celebrate her talent. They dissected her weirdness. The victory felt hollow. It revealed a devastating truth. Even at the pinnacle of success, the monster she created to protect herself was now consuming her. She was more famous than ever, but more isolated than ever. She was trapped. It would take traveling to the other side of the world, to a place scarred by real monsters, for her to find a reason to save herself. That place was Cambodia. While on location filming Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, the bubble of Hollywood finally burst. Surrounded by ancient temples still bearing the scars of a brutal regime, the absurdity of her own life came into sharp focus. For the first time, she witnessed the profound, resilient suffering of a people healing from genocide. It was a perspective shift so violent it was like a rebirth. This was the catalyst. The profound awakening in the Cambodian killing fields gave her a new mission, one that was bigger than her own pain and bigger than any movie role. She adopted her first son, Maddox, from a Cambodian orphanage, a concrete, irreversible step away from the life she knew. The goal was no longer just to escape her past. It was to build an entirely new future, brick by meticulous brick. The wild child was dying, and in her place, a global icon was about to be constructed. This was the beginning of her great reinvention, and the rise of a global phenomenon, Brangelina. Her union with Brad Pitt wasn't just a love story. It was the creation of an impenetrable fortress. They weren't just a celebrity couple. They were a global brand, a powerhouse of glamour, influence, and philanthropy. Her work with the United Nations grew exponentially. She wasn't just visiting refugee camps. She was walking through active war zones in places like Darfur and Iraq, advocating on the world stage, becoming a voice for the voiceless. Together, they built the Rainbow Tribe, a family of adopted and biological children that became a living symbol of a borderless, enlightened existence. She had built a new identity, a new armor that was flawless. She was no longer the Hollywood rebel. She was Saint Angelina, a figure of grace, compassion, and untouchable dignity. She had built the perfect life, an unassailable fortress against her past. But the chilling truth is that any fortress, no matter how perfect, can eventually become a prison. The pressure to maintain this image of absolute perfection was immense, and the first major cracks in the walls appeared in the most personal way imaginable. In a stunningly brave op-ed for the New York Times, she revealed her decision to undergo a preventative double mastectomy. It was a masterclass in controlling her own narrative, turning a private health crisis into a global conversation. But while she took radical control of her body to fight a genetic fate, she was losing control of her private life. The fortress she had so carefully built came crashing down with the shocking, brutal collapse of Brangelina. The end was swift and savage. Reports surfaced of a terrible conflict on a private plane, and suddenly the myth of the perfect family was shattered. The divorce proceedings were agonizingly public, filled with accusations that stood in stark contrast to their pristine image. The very armor she designed to be her salvation had crumbled, exposing her to the harsh glare of the world once more vulnerable than ever before. The fortress had fallen, and in the rubble, Angelina Jolie had to finally face the one person she had been running from all along, herself. In the aftermath, a third and perhaps final Angelina quietly emerged. This one wasn't the rebel and she wasn't the saint. She was simply a survivor. She retreated from the constant glare of the spotlight, her world narrowing to her children, her health, and her work behind the camera. Directing films like First They Killed My Father, a story told through the eyes of a Cambodian child, was a full-circle moment. She was no longer the star in front of the lens, but the storyteller shaping it, finally in complete control. This wasn't a failure. It was a release. It was the shedding of the suffocating weight of the personas she had built. In recent, more reflective interviews, a fragile piece is visible. She is no longer performing. She is simply existing. So what was she running from? A feeling of worthlessness, born in the long shadow of a famous name. The perfect life she built wasn't the answer. It was a necessary, but temporary, prison. Her true survival wasn't the dramatic transformation into a saint. It was the quiet, painful journey through that persona to find the resilient woman on the other side. The woman who finally seems to be at peace with all the versions of herself. The broken girl, the defiant rebel, the global icon, and the mother who brought them all home. For more untold Hollywood stories like this, make sure you subscribe.